The corridor of the maternity ward smelled of antiseptic and quiet despair, a place where joy and fear lived side by side. Nurses moved softly, their shoes barely making a sound on the polished floor, while behind closed doors new lives cried their first cries. On a narrow bench near the window sat Alina, pale and exhausted, her hands trembling as she clutched the thin hospital blanket around her shoulders. She had given birth only hours earlier. Her body ached, her mind floated somewhere between pain and relief, and all she wanted was rest. Instead, she was facing the cold, unyielding stare of her mother-in-law. Vera Ivanovna stood over her like a judge delivering a sentence. Her lips were pressed into a sharp line, her eyes full of irritation rather than concern. "I told you from the beginning," she hissed, careful not to raise her voice too much, "you are not welcome here. This child will only bring problems. Get up. Leave. You have no place in this family." Alina felt the words hit harder than the physical pain she had endured during labor. She searched Vera's face for even a flicker of mercy, but found none. Her husband, Maxim, was nowhere to be seen. He had promised to return after making a phone call, but minutes had turned into an hour. Alone, weak, and emotionally shattered, Alina tried to speak, but her voice failed her. Vera took a step closer. "Don't look at me like that," she snapped. "You should have thought earlier. You were never the right woman for my son. And now, with a baby. Don't embarrass us further. Pack your things. The nurse will help you if you can't walk." Tears welled in Alina's eyes. She lowered her head, shame and disbelief washing over her. Other patients pretended not to notice, though the tension in the air was thick enough to suffocate. Just as Vera turned, satisfied that she had delivered her cruelty, the sound of confident footsteps echoed down the hallway. A tall man in a dark coat approached, his presence immediately commanding attention. He wasn't dressed like hospital staff, nor did he look like a lost visitor. His eyes scanned the scene quickly, landing on Alina, then shifting to Vera. "Is there a problem here?" he asked calmly, but there was steel in his voice. Vera froze. The color drained from her face. She recognized him instantly. It was Sergei Petrovich, a longtime family acquaintance and, more importantly, a man whose opinion carried weight, financial, social, and moral. He had helped Maxim's family more than once, and Vera had always treated him with exaggerated respect. This is a family matter," Vera stammered. "You don't need to get involved." Sergei glanced at Alina's tear-streaked face, then at the hospital bracelet on her wrist. "A family matter," he repeated. "You're forcing a woman who just gave birth out of the maternity ward. That's not a family matter. That's cruelty." Vera opened her mouth to protest, but no words came out. She stood there, speechless, exposed. Sergei turned to Alina, his tone softening. "Sit. Don't move. No one is going to force you anywhere." At that moment, Maxim appeared at the end of the corridor, his phone still in his hand. He stopped short when he saw the scene. "What's going on?" he asked, though his eyes already betrayed the answer. "What's going on," Sergei said sharply, "is that your mother is trying to throw your wife and newborn out like unwanted luggage." Maxim's face flushed. He looked at his mother, then at Alina. The silence stretched painfully. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "Mom, stop. This ends now." Vera's authority crumbled in an instant. She tried to regain control, muttering excuses, but no one listened anymore. Nurses approached, and Sergei spoke quietly with them, ensuring Alina would be cared for properly. Vera stood aside, defeated, realizing she had gone too far. Elsewhere, in a brightly lit television studio thousands of miles away, another confrontation was unfolding, just as intense in its own way. Sylvester Stallone sat across from Willie Geist on the Sunday Today show, promoting his latest project. What was meant to be a relaxed conversation had slowly turned sharp. Willie leaned forward, asking a question about aging in Hollywood, about whether Stallone felt he was holding on too long to his action hero image. The words landed poorly. Stallone's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing slightly. "You know," he said slowly, "that question assumes a lot." Willie smiled awkwardly, trying to keep the tone light. "I'm just saying some critics." "Critics don't live my life," Stallone cut in. "They don't get up every morning and fight to prove something to themselves. This isn't about ego. It's about purpose." The atmosphere shifted. Crew members glanced at each other nervously. Willie attempted to steer the conversation back, but Stallone was no longer in a forgiving mood. Years of being underestimated, labeled, and dismissed seemed to surface all at once. I've been told my whole life that I don't belong, Stallone continued, his voice rising. Wrong look, wrong voice, wrong time. And yet here I am. Still working, still standing, so don't frame it like I'm overstaying some imaginary welcome. Willie paused, realizing the line had been crossed. I didn't mean, but that's how it came out, Stallone said firmly. Words matter. The exchange wasn't loud, but it was intense. Viewers could feel it through the screen. After a brief, tense silence, Stallone exhaled, collected himself, and the interview moved on, though the spark never fully faded. Back in the maternity ward, Alina lay in her hospital bed, her baby sleeping peacefully beside her. Sergei had left, but not before ensuring Maxim understood his responsibility. Vera had gone home in silence, her power broken, her words finally failing her. Alina stared at her child, a small hand curled into a fist, and felt something new rise within her, not fear, not shame, but strength. She had been pushed, humiliated, nearly discarded, yet she was still here. Just like Stallone on that studio set, she realized that being told you don't belong doesn't make it true. Sometimes, it takes a confrontation, an eruption, or an unexpected ally to change everything. Sometimes, the people who try to force you out are the very ones who end up speechless when you refuse to disappear. The day that was supposed to mark the happiest moment of Alina's life instead became a quiet nightmare. The maternity ward was filled with the muted sounds of newborn cries and the steady beeping of monitors, but for Alina, everything felt distant and unreal. Her body was weak after hours of labor, her heart heavy with emotions she couldn't yet name. She lay half-reclined on the hospital bed, staring at the pale ceiling, when the sharp click of heels broke the fragile calm. Vera Ivanovna entered the room without knocking. Her expression was tight, almost annoyed, as if she were inconvenienced by the very existence of the place. She didn't look at the baby sleeping in the crib beside the bed. Instead, her eyes fixed on Alina with unmistakable disdain. So, it's done, she said flatly. Now listen to me carefully. Alina tried to push herself up, wincing in pain. Please, I'm very tired, she whispered, hoping for understanding, or at least silence. You'll have plenty of time to rest somewhere else, Vera replied coldly. You can't stay here long. Maxim and I have talked. This whole situation has gone too far. Alina felt a chill run through her. What do you mean? I mean exactly what I say, Vera snapped. You rushed into motherhood thinking it would secure your place. But you miscalculated. You're not the woman my son needs. And now you're dragging him down with responsibilities he never wanted. Tears blurred Alina's vision. She glanced at the tiny bundle in the crib, her chest tightening. This is his child, she said weakly. Your grandchild. Vera scoffed. Blood alone means nothing. Respect, status, control, that's what matters. You have none of those. So don't pretend this baby changes anything. She reached for Alina's bag, shoving it toward her. Get dressed. I'll call a taxi. You can go wherever you came from. The humiliation was unbearable. Alina's hands shook as she tried to speak, but no words came out. Just then, the door opened again, and a tall man stepped inside, his presence instantly altering the atmosphere. Put that bag down, he said calmly. Vera turned sharply, her face stiffening when she saw him. Sergei Petrovich, I didn't expect you. I can see that, he replied, his gaze steady. I came to congratulate your family. Instead, I find this. He looked at Alina, then at the baby, then back at Vera. Are you seriously throwing a woman out of the hospital hours after childbirth? Vera tried to smile, but it faltered. This is a misunderstanding. Family issues. Sergei shook his head slowly. No, this is abuse. And I won't ignore it. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried authority. Vera's confidence evaporated. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, suddenly unsure of herself. Sergei turned to Alina. You stay. You recover. No one has the right to treat you like this. At that moment, Maxim walked in, his face tense. One look at Sergei told him everything. Mom, Maxim said quietly, what are you doing? I'm protecting you, Vera shot back, desperation creeping into her tone. No, Maxim replied, his voice shaking. You're destroying my family. The words hung in the air like a verdict. Vera stepped back, stunned. For the first time, she had no argument, no leverage. She left the room in silence, her heels no longer clicking with authority but retreat. Far away, in a television studio bathed in warm lights, a different kind of confrontation was unfolding. Sylvester Stallone sat across from Willie Geist, the conversation initially friendly, even nostalgic. They spoke about films, legacy, and the passage of time. Then Willie leaned in and asked a question that shifted the mood. "Do you ever feel," he said cautiously, "that Hollywood wants you to step aside, make room for the next generation?" Stallone smiled thinly. "That's an interesting way to phrase it." Willie continued, "Some say the era of action heroes like you is over." The smile disappeared. Stallone's eyes hardened, not with anger alone, but with something deeper, years of frustration. "People have been saying my era is over since it began," he said. "They said I couldn't act. They said I couldn't write. They said I looked wrong, sounded wrong." The studio fell quiet. "And yet," Stallone went on, his voice rising, "every time I was told to step aside, I stepped forward. Not for them. For myself." Willie attempted to soften the exchange. "I didn't mean it as a dismissal. But it is one," Stallone interrupted. "It's polite, but it's the same message. You don't belong anymore. And I reject that." The tension was undeniable. Cameras kept rolling as Stallone leaned back, taking a breath. "I've earned my place. And no one gets to decide when I disappear." The interview continued, but the spark had ignited something raw and honest, resonating with viewers who had felt pushed aside in their own lives. Back in the hospital, Alina finally allowed herself to breathe. Maxim sat beside her, holding her hand, his eyes filled with regret and resolve. "I should have stopped this sooner," he said quietly. Alina nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I thought I was alone." "You're not," he replied firmly. "Not anymore." She looked at her sleeping child and felt a sense of clarity settle in. Being told to leave, to vanish, to accept silence, those were weapons used by people afraid of losing control. But strength, she realized, often arrives unexpectedly, through a stranger's intervention or a long-suppressed voice finally rising. Like Stallone on that stage, Alina understood something essential. Being pushed aside does not mean you are finished. It means someone else is afraid of your presence. And sometimes, the moment they try to erase you is the very moment you find the power to stand your ground.